first lunar landing was an immense event in history, but why choose to go to the moon? For the United States to land on the moon ahead of all foreign organizations in 1969 was the breaking of many barriers. These included winning the space race and breaking many records, including being the first to land a man on the moon, to take off from the moon, and to return back to Earth safely, acts of global superiority in the face of rivals. The space race was a race or war between the United States and the Soviet Union to reach spaceflight first. On October 4th, 1957, the Soviet Union launched Sputnik 1, the first artificial satellite, sparking the space race. The next year, 1958, U.S. President Dwight D. Eisenhower started the National Aeronautics and Space Administration, NASA, as a response to Sputnik and to help the U.S. get ahead in spaceflight. In 1959, NASA started its first program, Mercury, to send a man into the Earth's orbit and to safely return him. On April 12, 1961, Soviet cosmonaut Yuri Gagarin attained 2 firsts, to enter space and to orbit the Earth in 89 minutes. On September 12, 1962, the next U.S. President, John F. Kennedy, gave the "We Choose to Go to the Moon" speech at Rice University, setting the goal to send a person to the moon within that decade.
We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard. Because that challenge is one that we're willing to accept, one we are unwilling to postpone, and one we intend to win.
This pushed NASA to do what was necessary in order to win the space race. Thus, the U.S. was no longer merely walking in the race, but now running. On May 5th, 1961, Mercury astronaut Alan Shepard became the first American in space. On February 20th, 1962, another astronaut, John Glenn, became the first American to orbit the Earth. In 1965, NASA started the Gemini program to prepare to go to the moon. Before going to the moon, they had to learn many things, including what the effects were on astronauts from staying in space for several days at a time, how to attach or detach 2 vessels in space, and how to perform a spacewalk, among other things. Together, Mercury and Gemini built a door to another program, Apollo. The first Apollo flight was in 1968. The early Apollo missions did not land on the moon. Apollo 8 was the first mission to orbit the moon and see the other side of it. Apollo 11 was supposed to take 3 astronauts, Neil Armstrong, Edwin Aldrin, and Michael Collins, into lunar orbit, split Armstrong and Aldrin in the lunar module from Collins in the command module, and eventually land on the moon, while Collins remained in lunar orbit. All this was successful. The first of the astronauts to walk on the moon was Neil Armstrong. While around 600 million people around the world watched, he took the first step on the moon and said,
"It's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind."
Armstrong and Aldrin left these items on the moon. Not only had Kennedy's goal of reaching the moon been achieved, But the United States had won an important victory over the Soviet Union, and broken the barriers necessary to do so. Apollo 11 was the first human landing not on Earth. It helped prepare NASA for future projects, such as landing humans on the Moon again and even Mars.